Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other, and today's episode is Merlin Season 4, Episode 5, A Servant of Two Masters. Episode in a nutshell is a brief summary of what happened in the episode. So the episode begins with Arthur and Merlin and some of the other knights being attacked within the kingdom on their route to sign a treaty. And Merlin ends up being distracted by trying to help Arthur with the people fighting him using his magic that he doesn't see an attack coming for him and ends up injured. Merlin, of course, or not, Arthur carries Merlin away in order to get him away from the battle. However, they do end up separated by a rock fall when it looks like they're about to be ambushed and overwhelmed by the enemy. This leads to Arthur returning, obviously upset, as Merlin has gone missing and he orders all of the forest searched. Agravain is the one who actually found Merlin, brought him to Morgana, and Morgana prevents Agravain from killing Merlin because Arthur is oddly fond of the boy and therefore they can use him. Morgana briefly wakes up Merlin, explains to him what a Femora is as she summons it and what he is going to be doing while the Femora basically overrides his brain and makes him want to assassinate Arthur. Merlin then is dumped in a bog and found by Arthur and Gwaine. And then he attempts several different assassination attempts to try to kill Arthur. He tries to spike Arthur's food with a poison, aconite. However, Gwen has already brought his food to him, so he ends up killing the pigs instead. Then we have him going to Leon to find a very good crossbow that could potentially kill Arthur. And because Merlin's known to be so loyal, Leon thinks he's joking. He wasn't. He then sets up a trap in the cupboard. However, when Arthur goes into the cupboard, the trap doesn't work. However, then when Merlin opens the cupboard slightly after, it does then work. So he ends up failing again. Then Arthur asks him for his sword, so Merlin then picks up his sword and then goes trying to run after Arthur, but ends up knocking himself out with the sword instead. But by this point, Gaius and Gwen have figured out something's wrong with Merlin, so they then knock him out, take him from the room without Arthur being aware of it, or well, Arthur's aware of it, but like making an excuse to Arthur to take Merlin. Merlin then is freed of one of the heads of the Femora. However, because the main body is still fine, it does end up growing back. So he then ends up trying to he puts a powder in Arthur's bath, which turns it acidic. However, luckily Gaius and Gwen once again come in and stop Arthur from bathing, which leads to an awkward moment where Gwen sees Arthur being ready for bathing. And this, of course, then leads to, instead of trying to remove the Femora, Gaius then just paralyzes the Femora so that Merlin is in control of his own mind, and then Merlin goes off to confront Morgana. In order to hide his identity, he does become Dragoon the Great again, and is briefly harassed by the knights. However, he does end up defeating them with magic and using them as stepping stones so that he can get onto his horse, which unfortunately before they arrived he was having a lot of trouble doing. He then finds his way to Morgana's hut, where he does see Agravain leaving, before he then goes into the hut to find the Femora. Morgana comes in, sees him, and because of her dreams of him in previous episodes, is scared of him and wants to believe he's a figment of her imagination. But ultimately, she does end up attacking him. He attacks back. They have a magic battle back and forth, which Merlin ultimately ends up winning, leaving Morgana unconscious outside her hut, while he then destroys the Femora and returns to Camelot, where Arthur accuses him of being in the tavern for the last 2 days. And unfortunately for him, Arthur, while Merlin was missing, got a new servant, George. And George is very, very skilled at being a servant. Unfortunately, he's very dull, and therefore Arthur's punishment to Merlin for hanging out in a tavern for the last 2 days is to be trained by George, who apparently makes jokes about brass. Meanwhile, Agravain does find Morgana unconscious outside and worries about her, but that is where we end this episode. So now that we have been reminded about the episode, we'll now rank the episode. We'll start with our mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the score, followed by the personal ranking list, which is more about entertainment value and opinion. So starting with our mostly objective rank values, we have +1 for our single episode supporting character introduction, which is George, the very efficient servant. Then we have the impactful, memorable moment line, etc., which was pretty much every assassination attempt. But I just grouped them all together, so that brings us to 4 points total. Then we have another 4 points for our multi-season main character development, which is, of course, Merlin being brainwashed to assassinate Arthur by Morgana and having his mind controlled. And then the final 4 points is the world building, which is in the introduction of a femora, which basically looks like a mini Hydra and is used by high priestesses of the old religion to control a person's mind. So once that is implanted in Merlin, it takes over his mind, leaving his one and only goal as killing Arthur and also hilariously making him kind of abrasive in his interactions with all of the other characters as well. Either way, that brings us to 12 points, which does make this a 10 out of 10 episode. And so we begin our season 4 ranking so far on our mostly objective ranking with The Darkest Hour. The Wicked Day. This episode comes in third, A Servant of Two Masters, and that is because when episodes share the same score, they are just ranked in episode order. Then we have Athusa, and in last place, His Father's Son. Personal ranking. This is probably one of, if not, my favorite episode of the entire series. I think it is funny start to finish. It's absolutely hilarious. It gives me a tummy ache when I watch it because I'm laughing so hard throughout the entire thing. Even the non-assassination attempts that are made, pretty much every part of this episode is funny in some way or dramatic. Like it's either a battle, a hilarious moment, a magic battle. Dragoon the Great is always always one to see because he does not have a filter when he is Dragoon the Great, and the way he treats those knights is also very funny. There is nothing wrong with this episode at all. Nothing. And it is engaging and entertaining start to finish, and that makes it, in my opinion, like I said, pretty much the best episode of the series from pure entertainment value. I mean, from plot value, there are other episodes that probably would top it, but entertainment value wise, nothing tops it, which is why I'm not needing to go into detail because it stands alone. It speaks for itself. It is funny. It is worth watching. And if you are only going to watch one episode out of the entire series, this is the one that I would recommend you watch. Which means, of course, that it is a 10 out of 10. And of course, also, it is at the top of my personal list. A Servant of Two Masters, and then it is followed by The Darkest Hour, The Wicked Day, Athusa, and then in last place is also His Father's Son. And that brings us now to the series ranking so far. And a reminder that on our mostly objective ranking, we have Season 2 in first place with 70.83%, Season 3 in second with 70%, Season 1 in third place with 69.23%, and Season 4 so far has a score of 44 out of 110. Personal ranking side, Season 3 in first place with 72.73%, Season 2 in second with 70.83%. Season 1 is in third place with 66.92%, and Season 4 so far has a score of 41 out of 110. And with that, we've now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 4, Episode 5, A Servant of Two Masters, best episode in the series. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.